Jordan Nobles is a Canadian composer who specializes in creating spatial music and open instrumentation compositions. His music is performed worldwide and has won several international and national awards, including the 2017 Juno Award for Classical Composition of the Year. Jordan is also the founding artistic director of Redshift Music Society. Mark Takeshi McGregor is widely regarded as one of Canada's leading interpreters of classical and contemporary music. As a soloist, chamber musician, improviser, interdisciplinary artist, and as flutist of the internationally lauded Aventa Ensemble, McGregor has performed extensively throughout North and South America, Europe, Israel, and Australasia. From 2005 to 2012, Mark was co-artistic director of the Redshift Music Society. During this period, Redshift produced nearly 40 concerts, including the celebrated Vertical Orchestra events in the atrium of the Vancouver Public Library. He also helped launch Redshift Records in 2007 as a means of documenting the music of emerging and established Canadian and international composers. He remains strongly connected to the recording label and has acted as producer for a number of releases. Here now is my recent conversation with Jordan Nobles and Mark Takeshi McGregor. Now we're joined by Mark Takeshi McGregor and Jordan Nobles. What is Redshift and how did it originate? Why did you come up with this idea, and how has it evolved over the years?
Well, should we even talk about the term Redshift? Why don't you?
I would love to hear you define the term.
I can never get it right. I get Redshift and Blueshift mixed up all the time. So if you could do it, that'd be great.
Blueshift Redshift and Blueshift are the Doppler, the Doppler effect, but transposed to light. So you have to be moving at a substantial distance or speed, fraction of the speed of light, in order for there to be a shift in the spectrum of light. Doppler effect, when a train goes past you and goes, trains don't go that, like ding, 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 ding. That's the effect. If a galaxy is speeding away from you at a third the speed of light, the spectrum of light from that galaxy will be shifted into the red, just as if it's coming toward you, it'd be shifted into the blue. It's a very cool concept. That's how Doppler how Hubble realized when looking at all the galaxies that the universe was expanding. And I thought that concept was quite an unusual, fascinating concept. I thought that could apply to moving away from tradition and the expanding universe of music and musical styles.
One recurring theme in your music seems to be this kind of interest in, let's say, mathematical concepts, if not sort of the cosmological as well, the astrological phenomenons of the natural world and the universe. Is there a reason, were you sort of inspired by certain specific things to get into music, to express these ideas through sound, or was science and science fiction perhaps always an interest of yours, as you have written a lot of pieces involving some of these topics?
A lot of these natural phenomenon are something that I find fascinating, and they inspire me as models and as structures to inspire a piece based around it, like water and clouds and rainbows and the tide and stars and planets and orbits. The natural phenomenon of the universe is an endless supply of inspiration, and you can kind of model a piece after it, a composition, if you imagine certain assumptions.
The science can actually dictate the form. And
yeah. I mean, the one piece that I think about, my first piece for Mark, was called Water Map, and that's rain turning into rivulets, turning into a creek, and then a river, and finally a delta and the ocean. The map of water coming from the mountains down into the ocean, and then writing a piece that sort of reflects that kind of shape.
And Mark, as Jordan mentioned, you've played his pieces. You played a number of Jordan's pieces, both as an ensemble member and also as a soloist, and in some cases also multi-tracking works with Jordan in the studio as sort of a collaborative thing. I mean, you guys are so closely associated as colleagues, I know, but I'm actually a little bit more interested in how you two came to meet and how it led to the formation of Redshift. We all know Mark as well as a very prominent flute player and champion of new music works here in Canada. But it's perhaps just serendipitous that the two of you were friends before Redshift, is that right?
yeah, we were actually roommates. And I mean, truth told, Redshift began in 2002 with a concert with a percussion quartet, now defunct, called 4 Gallon Drum. And it was actually a collaboration between Jordan, composer Jennifer Butler, composer Derek Chark, John Crawford. Was there anyone else?
That was it.
That was it, yeah. And after that concert, it kind of went dormant. And then years later, Jordan and I ended up being roommates because, actually, from Jen Butler, because we both knew her. And it was sort of, Redshift was actually kind of reborn over the kitchen table. It was a time when I was looking for more opportunities to perform, and Jordan was looking for more opportunities to compose. We thought it'd be interesting to sort of to take these two facts and sort of combine it into a rebirth of Redshift music.
Partly presenting concerts locally, featuring a lot of friends and colleagues that you guys already had this established network of performers and composers locally.
Yeah.
So it was kind of sort of an umbrella for this group of people to have their works played, and for, as you said, for the performers also to get experience.
Yeah, but I think it was also more than that, because I think one of the interesting things about Redshift was traditionally contemporary music is we think of contemporary music as being for not necessarily an elite audience, but a very rarefied audience. You know, like it's people who you have to know about what contemporary music is. You have to have an understanding of who contemporary composers are and things like this. And what we want to do is create projects where everyone, like from all walks of life, could actually access contemporary Canadian music and be able to appreciate it and actually be able to relate it back to the world around them. Because I think that's one of the big problems that we have in contemporary music is your average person doesn't actually see how something like contemporary music connects to their contemporary world. And so we started to create projects in large public spaces where the venue itself played a very important role in how people heard the music. It informed how the composers wrote their pieces, and it informed how performers played it. And you would all of a sudden you would have people listening to, say, a particular venue in their city, say like the Vancouver Public Library, the Atrium downtown. All of a sudden, this landmark, the city landmark, is suddenly being re-envisioned in musical terms.
First time I remember hearing about Redshift or being aware of Redshift, I was still living in Victoria, and I think I may have been in contact with Jordan, having played some of his works. But I think I do recall for the first time seeing images of maybe that first show at the Vancouver Public Library that featured musicians is now known as the Vertical Orchestra, where the musicians are spread throughout the venue. If anybody knows the building of the Vancouver Library downtown, it's a architecturally stunning building with a very, very high Colosseum-style sort of inner atrium, as Mark had mentioned. And I believe there were some acrobatics or some aerials also, if I'm not mistaken. I seem to remember some tapestry work, something of that.
We did that for the Cultural Olympiad with Ariosa, which is a vertical dance group. They're a vertical dance group, and we're the vertical orchestra, so they threw us together, and I still work with them occasionally. It was quite an interesting experience. That was the first time we've ever had thousands of people come to a show of ours, come to the vertical orchestra.
I think it was the first time we ever turned people away.
Yeah, and then there was a huge crowd outside, because we did go outside at one point.
Because there's a capacity in the atrium.
I guess due to building codes and whatever else. I mean, it's not a traditional concert space, obviously. So that's probably one of the snags you guys have to deal with presenting. Obviously, I mean, some of the concerts I've been a part of, some of the more kind of fantastic settings. For example, at the Vancouver Aquatic Center. Yeah. And you happen to put me on the highest diving board, so I appreciate that.
Because you could handle it.
I was trying to play cool that day. I have to say I was staying a little bit farther from the ledge.
I was on the lower one, and my knees were shaking.
Yeah, no, I actually a degree of vertigo just looking down at the audience, who was actually swimming in the swimming pool. So, again, sort of an interesting setting. Maybe you can tell us about some of the more memorable settings that you've done in recent years. Also, Jordan, we mentioned the library and the Aquatic Center.
The Aquatic Center was quite a fascinating one. It's the first time I've ever had to write a grant with like in the budget column there was like lifeguards. And we also did a show in the Blodell Conservatory, and they were like warning us, okay, if the birds don't like the music, they'll let you know, and they're they'll stop your show. They're allowed. You can hear them miles through the jungle. So if the birds in a conservatory don't like what you're doing, it's over. These judges, these little.
I got dive bombed.
Did you?
Yeah, I got attacked.
In the conservatory.
I actually got attacked by a bird.
Oh my goodness!
Like,
I imagine the flute would be probably like a rival.
This
sound
is it.
or
Like, it
something.
actually, I was playing the flute, and it was like, what are you doing? What are you doing? It was flapping around me, and it was like zigzagging and darting around my head while I'm playing your music, and it was like,
Of course.
what's going on?
Playing
What's
the
going on?
composer.
What? And it was like diving around and stuff, and it was really interesting.
It was just trying to read the score.
You know, it was interesting. That particular show, that Blodell show, was cool because we did 2 performances, one in the afternoon and one in the evening.
Right.
And different birds and animals come out depending on what time of day it is. So I was being dive bombed in the first show, and there was a lot of activity, and there was like a parrot that kept on like freaking out and like screaming, and they eventually, I think they actually removed the parrot from.
Right.
And
Oh my goodness!
but then
This is the way he plays.
It was a heckler, if you will.
no, really, yeah. But then the evening show, all these different birds emerge, and it was a lot, like, it was gentler, and I remember like playing like a 2-note phrase, and then this bird answered, like, you know, I was like doo doo, and then went doo, and then you play it again, and like it was like the instructions of the piece were like play 3 times and move on to the next cell. I think I played it like 17 times because because this bird just kept answering. I was so enchanted by it. It was
That's
really neat.
Amazing! Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Redshift has become known locally for these kind of really fascinating public events. I would say, you know, it goes a little bit beyond music, like you said. It's actually very compelling. Even people who have, as Mark mentioned, you know, the people that are not typically drawn to these niche new music communities, and beyond just the performers and the composers and family, you get people that really may have never thought to go out of their way to discover these composers who, for example, stop by Trout Lake to walk their dog, and we have this wonderful saxophone octet, or
Yeah,
it was an octet, right, situated around the lake, playing again your music and some other local composers in this sort of canonic style, you know, conversational style. It just sort of leaves a lot open to the moment. I know that temporality is a major theme also in your works, Jordan. But moving past the public concert events, I'm curious to know also how you both, or perhaps one of you, came up with the idea for what is known as Redshift Records.
Let me try. Let me take a shot.
Yeah.
And then you can correct me. We were roommates, and Mark and Rachel got a grant to do a Teresias CD, to make one with Barbara Pentland music and some other Canadian composers. And you didn't have a label for it. You were just going to make it, and you thought, well, I need a label. I could go with this label or that label. And then I think we decided, well, let's just start our own.
Let's just make a label.
Let's just start our own.
Yeah.
And that was it. And so we made, I think, 1 or 2. And then we actually had Chris Iguanti.
Oh yeah. Clarinet,
Was like,
Clarinet
hey,
player.
can I be on your label? And that was a shock to
And
us.
we
We're
were
like,
we have a label.
why why would you want to be on our label?
Yeah.
And so we were like, sure. And we met him a couple times, and we hammered out an agreement. And then someone else wanted to be on our label, and then we made another CD, and then somebody else wanted to be on our label, and now we've got like 50 plus CDs, and we're still not.
It started off as a sort of an in the family kind of thing, right? Like I did, like Rachel Iwasa and I did the first CD together, and then I did a
Different Stones,
which is a multi-track flute CD, and then I think Rachel did Cosmophony.
Yeah.
And then Chris Iguanti, and then after that, it felt like you actually had this body of work that you could sort of call your, you know, a label, quote unquote. And it kind of grew from there. So it's really, actually, that's, of the things that Redshift has done, is one of the things that I'm sort of the most proud of, I guess, because it's, it provides documentation of the work that you've done, you know? Like, I mean, I love performing, and I love this idea of getting, you know, Canadian music out into the world and having people who wouldn't normally hear it, you know? But there's something about having that sort of, you know, that permanent document.
I thought maybe now would be a good time actually to listen to one of your recordings of Jordan's piece. This is a piece entitled Air. And perhaps either yourself or Jordan can tell us a little bit about the composition and the recording, when it was recorded, when the piece dates from, Jordan.
It was 2008. Actually, it's not that far back.
2008.
18.
Oh, okay.
Where are we
okay,
now?
So yeah, it's 20-something.
Okay, 20-something.
Yeah,
Um,
I lost track.
Pandemic, you know,
It's, everything blurs
It
now.
really doesn't matter anymore.
Blur's Day.
Blurs.
And I had an agreement with the studio to bring musicians in and record, but only one at a time, because they just let me in. And if I didn't bring a large group, then they didn't have to chaperone me. So I brought Mark in, and he multi-tracked a bunch of sound effects for bass flute. And play trills in this key and do this and do this. And then I took that piece, or that material, and made a piece out of it, which is the opposite of how you would normally make a piece. You write the piece out, and then you give it to the musician to learn. In this case, he was giving me material, which I then was able to mold. And the idea was that it would be for a 16-channel speaker system, which we took to Prince George. But I really liked the piece.
For the Castet Festival.
Yes, exactly. With our 16-speaker array system. And I really liked the piece. So that became the first track for a multi-tracked, first piece for a multi-tracked CD called Rosetta Stone that I made, which I'm still the most proud of the things I've done.
And we're going to take a listen right now to Air, composed by Jordan Nobles, for 16 bass flutes as performed by Mark Takeshi McGregor. Mark Takeshi McGregor performing 16 bass flutes. Was that right, Mark?
I believe so, yes.
By Jordan Nobles, and we just heard the story about this piece. A little bit of information about the array, by the way. Jordan just referred to this speaker setup that some of us have gotten to know recently as performers and the public as well. I noticed in the last couple of years, Jordan, you've also been doing these sort of installation-style concerts, musical events at various places, including the Roundhouse Theater, or not even in the theater, in fact. I think it was in the sort of the...
in the exhibition hall, up in the rafters.
Right. As well, if I'm not mistaken, you also used the Vancouver Public Library for that purpose. So no musicians, just the speaker set up in the...
Yeah, generally it's been recorded musicians. We take the musicians and we bring them into the studio, record them for the most part, and then stick them up in speakers. The reason being, we can put the speakers in places where the musicians can't go, up on ledges that would be too dangerous for them to be. And also with a speaker system, you can have everything perfectly in sync, where with musicians 100 meters apart can never really be in sync very well due to the fact that they can't hear each other.
Yeah, in the past, I mean, traditionally in Redshift concerts, we use the stopwatch method, which is kind of gather before the concert, 10 minutes before, and we do a countdown, and we just hit go, or we hit start, and hope for the best. But the pieces are actually composed with a timeline. So in other words, traditional metric counting is not always the main kind of backbone of the piece, rather that we're just following the clock. So in the case of we're spread out over a large spanning area, for example, we may not be able to hear each other. But if we're following our scores with some degree of accuracy, hopefully things are more or less where they should be. Is that the idea? Yeah.
There's a ton of ways to coordinate spatialized musicians. You can have multiple conductors. You can have a closed circuit television where you see a conductor, everybody's watching a TV where the conductor is, or like a light system where you're shining thing, like when everything turns blue, then you do this. There's a ton of ways that Henry Brandt and other people have come up with, but we found that the stopwatches are probably the most reliable, like a Bluetooth metronome. When you've got 30 musicians,
high degree of error,
someone's gonna
margin of error.
Someone's phone's gonna die, and but the stopwatches have always been hugely reliable. We had at one point, I think we still do, 70 stopwatches. Redshift does, so we can do up to 70 musicians, I guess.
It occurred to me early on that vertical orchestra is in a position to sort of lead the way almost in separating musicians to observe physical distancing and possibly even using the array or some other remote systems. You know, there could be some interesting presentations of new music kind of going, again, outside of the box and still having some limited mass gatherings. Had you thought about that, Jordan? Do you have some
yes.
plans?
It's actually been, as soon as things get opened up, we will be doing a vertical orchestra concert. We'll be doing a concert in possibly the Van Dusen Gardens or some such place where musicians are tens, if not 100 meters apart, performing in sync according to a stopwatch. Or say the Vancouver Art Gallery. You go walk through the art gallery, you're never in a group. You're always like isolated. So we'd come up with a concert where we have a musician in every room of the art gallery, just off in the corner, all playing the same music. So as you pass from room to room, you'd hear multiple performers in different rooms. And I mean, people walk through an art gallery, they're usually quite socially distant from everybody else. They're just looking at art. And I thought that would be something that we could do, and we could do it this summer, this fall.
Mark, you know, you and I have worked pretty closely together here for the last several years, and even before that, I think we have very kind of parallel lives in the new music community here, both as educators and performers and presenters as well. You know, I certainly have a lot of thoughts of my own as to how we've had to adapt in a very short time span here. But I'm curious to know kind of how you, let's say, how you sort of push through the initial phases into a level of productivity. I see that you're very active right now producing videos. I know that you're constantly having a lot of different projects on the go. How did the shutdown, the quarantine, obviously it's just the complete seizure of all concert life and in-person contact with students, everything. How did that affect you as an artist? professionally, personally, and how did it change your idea about how to present your music to the public?
I think we all handled it differently, and I think we all respond. I think we're all responding to this pandemic differently. Like even in the arts, I think it varies from person to person. One of the things after sort of like the shock of realizing that we couldn't do these things, concerts were being shut down. Like March was the most shocking month of them all. I think like it was really sobering to realize that our livelihood was going to be compromised this way. After that passed, I realized I was thinking, this is such a great opportunity. Like, I want to learn this. I'm going to do this project. I'm going to do this project. And I even had this interview with Georgia Strait. They're actually these, I think they call them isolation diaries. They wanted to know what artists were doing during the lockdown. And I remember I was like really proud. I was like, I'm learning Polish and I'm doing this video and I'm drawing more and I'm doing this and blah, blah, blah. And it's funny how that's changed over the last few months. Like it's sort of like the gears have slowed a little bit, and it's allowed me to actually really focus on what's important to me. And yeah, you're right. Recording has been actually really, really important. So I've set up a little recording studio in my bedroom. Nothing as elaborate as what's around us at the moment, but
or my living room for those that are listening.
You wouldn't recognize it as a living room.
Really good.
It's pretty sweet. Okay. So
I'm a little jealous.
Yeah, actually, same here. I don't know how any of these things work, but I'm still jealous.
I'm still learning myself, so let's not worry about that.
But yeah, I've got a little studio set up in my bedroom, and I've just been going through. I have a series of solo pieces that I've been wanting to record, and I haven't been able to record them because all the recording venues have been shut down. So I've been doing them in my bedroom, and I've been editing on my own, and it's actually been kind of a cool process.
Very cool.
Yeah, and I'm kind of happy with what I've produced in the last couple of months.
Was that a recording project that was that you had started before the pandemic, or was it something that you sort of adjusted on the fly? Or?
No, yeah, you're right. It was a recording project called Lutalica, and it was a project of mine. It is a project of mine where I asked composers who lived along in Pacific Rim countries to submit pieces for solo flute, and the idea was to sort of see if there was any sort of like interconnections we could like create or visualize between these pieces, and see if there was if there's a Pacific Rim sound, And actually, it's a project that Jordan helped me set up back in 2016, and I figured I'd maybe get like a couple dozen submissions, and I'd play about 4 or 5 pieces, and we got just under 200 submissions.
Oh my goodness.
And a lot of them fabulous pieces, and so we ended up picking 20 of them, and over the course of several years now, I've been performing and recording them.
Okay.
So yeah, this has been actually the quote unquote quarantine time has been a really good opportunity for me to actually get some of these pieces in the can and actually get to know them and learn them, and
yeah, definitely. I totally understand that, Mark. As as a performer as well, it's just kind of having that quality time with your instrument, and even for myself, just kind of digging back into older pieces that I had played, as a student, or these big pieces I'd thinking about playing for quite some time. Actually have that quality time to sit down and play them, chip away at them, or just kind of thinking about new projects, sort of pivoting in a way to sort of adjust for the ongoing situation, which I think we can sort of take it for granted now that we're going to have to take this into consideration for at least a little while, right?
There's a lot of thinking going on right now, I
sure.
find, and I think that's actually a good and necessary thing to do,
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we worry that thinking is synonymous with inactivity, but it's actually part of the process. Rachel Iwasa, a pianist in town, she actually said that sometimes the artistic process involves doing nothing. Not nothing, but like, that period of inactivity is actually part of our activity, And that's sometimes a difficult thing to explain to people who aren't in the arts. But, sometimes we actually need time for plans to develop and to germinate, and
even just sort of recharging the creative spirit sometimes.
Absolutely.
Just sort of having Yeah.
If you're running around like crazy, getting one thing done, then another thing done, then another thing done, you don't often have time to stop and
to reflect.
recharge or just think about nothing or
or prioritize
or discover
Yeah.
something in your head, a connection between this and this that will inform the next work.
We have this thing at least in the freelancing music community here in Vancouver, and I'm pretty sure it happens elsewhere. This culture of glorifying the busy, and I'm totally a victim of this, where you meet somebody and it's like you meet a fellow musician and it's like, hey, what are you doing? And you basically list off all the gigs that you're doing because you want to make sure that you sound busy, and
sort of the Facebook effect as well. Like the social media, it's like, oh, this guy's got so much going on.
Yeah, you want to project this idea of like everything's great, like I've got gigs, and you don't want to actually like you want to create this facade that like everything is going well, and the best way of doing that is appearing busy, and all of a sudden none of us are busy, and I think that's actually been that's been the healthiest thing that's ever happened to the arts community. All of a sudden we all realize actually we're all kind of in the same boat, and we're all doing the same thing, and we're all sort of going at our own pace, and that's actually okay.
More generally, Jordan, we have the podcast going on. There's, as you said, the record label is growing exponentially at this point, and you have these vertical orchestra plans. With Redshift in general, and I would say also related to your composition process, how have you changed your mindset as to how you're going to present your works, how you're going to have musicians collaborate with each other? Do you have an increased sense of public responsibility as a presenter now that we have these kind of somewhat, we have these restrictions, these public health restrictions, and how has it changed or informed your creative ideas?
I've always been slipping into recordings and enjoyed making videos, but now as soon as that became the only thing that we could do, I've gotten very busy doing it. I'd rather spend more time sleeping in and kayaking, but it's become a huge sort of creative outlet to make things for the online community. But in discussing with my musician friends, my performer friends, they're desperate to get concerts going, and I feel like there's a responsibility somewhat in Redshift with our socially disparate concerts that we already do, that we should get out there, and as soon as it's safe to do socially distanced concerts. I'm planning things for this summer, I'm planning things for this fall, a number of things. And because Redshift doesn't use ticket revenue as a main source of income, it's become, I think it's like financially achievable to do a bunch of concerts while people are waiting for things to open up. We can get out there and we can do some interesting artistic things.
Yeah. There's definitely there's more opportunity maybe given the background of this organization, and we have so many willing participants, as you mentioned, right? I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your recent video projects. Those who are not aware, Jordan has been essentially curating a series of online videos through the Canadian Music Centre, where he's also an employee, and he's a resource for us locally here in downtown Vancouver. And very early on in the quarantine, Jordan started this series entitled the Unaccompanied series. I believe it's just simply called Unaccompanied, featuring solo performers. One of our guests today is Dory Haley, and you'll be hearing her performance of a work by Christopher Reike. And you're recording audio, you're recording video, and I see that you have some beautiful scrolling score excerpts. What was the inspiration for this? How did it come up? And tell us a little bit about some of the recent performers that you've been working with.
I think this started with a conversation with Sean Bickerton on the day the quarantine started. It's like, oh yeah, by the way, don't come into work today. Don't come into work this month. And we're like, well, what are we going to do? We had these concerts that we were about to do where all these musician friends of ours are going to get paid to come and perform, but we can't do those anymore. So all our musician friends are out of work. What can we do with the money that we had raised to pay them. And right off the bat, we were like, okay, let's, like, on day one, let's just bring them in anyway, pay them, and do like a solo piece, because it can't do a group thing, and call it unaccompanied, because there's no one around them. And so we embarked on that. And of course, my first call is Mark, because he's out of work and
I'm desperate for attention and
desperate
money.
for attention. So he's often the first call, like, hey, Mark, I'm doing a thing. Do you want to come to CMC and figure it out?
Sure, I have nothing else to do.
That's how it usually goes.
Yeah.
So Mark did, ironically, Jennifer Butler, so bringing that Redshift circle.
Well, actually, yeah. Actually, the video project was really cool because it, like we were talking about, like focusing on what's important, you know, and during this time, and that really was like a no-brainer for me in some ways because, you know, it's a video project. You're curating it. I'm performing it. Yeah, of course, I'm going to do Jen's piece. You know, like it was really nice to be able to do that.
So we've been selecting performers from the Vancouver region because we want to bring them into the studio. And we've asked them to choose a Canadian composer. So they choose a Canadian composer, they learn the piece, they come in, we record it, we make a video of it, and we throw it up online. So every week, we didn't know how long this was going to go on. I thought I might get 3 of these out, maybe 4. And now I just recorded the 15th one, and I think I'm going to hit 25 or 30 before fall.
Oh, wow, okay.
Because we're going to do one every week. Even I sometimes do 2 a week. I'm banking them so I can go hang out in Tofino on the beach for a while. But it's been really interesting because I am not telling them what to perform. I just say, hey, pick a piece and come in and like learn it and come in and we'll film it. And so we've got like a wide variety of pieces. I just recorded Michael Park doing a 12-minute speaking piano player piece by Paul McIntyre, which is charming and sweet and adorable. And it's so different than like something another performer would have chosen.
Where can we find these videos online? Is it on the Vimeo channel of the Canadian Music Center?
The best place to go is the CMC because they've been kindly hosting them on their Vimeo channel. We work in the CMC Murray Daskin Salon, so it's a co-production between Redshift and the Canadian Music Center. And but we do have them also on redshiftmusic.ca if you tend to drift over there. But we're just linking them to the CMC's Vimeo channel. They're also on the Canadian Music Center, the national YouTube channel, if you only do YouTube.
Something that Jordan's not mentioning about those videos is actually how high quality they are, you know, and actually that's...
I was going to get into that.
Yeah. Well, here, allow me to compliment you.
No, I'll do it.
But they're really, really well made. And the Daskin Salon is actually a really good place to do it. It's a mini black box theater. And it's been a good time to do it because generally, because the CMC is located on Davie Street, it's a busy street, but because of the pandemic, it's actually been relatively quiet. So the recording environment has actually been really good. And we are experiencing a lot of digital content these days, and I get it. Like, it's right across the board, and it's like there's a lot of things that are being done in people's living rooms, which of course is like that's the only concert hall that we have presently, you know. So, but it is nice to be able to hear and watch Canadian music being played within a semi-controlled environment, and we actually get a lot of diversity, as you were pointing out. Like, every time I watch one of those videos, it's like the music is completely different than the last one. It's an instrument that I wasn't expecting. You know, like you've got French horn, you've got, you know,
that's it. Just French horn.
Just French horn. I'm actually trying to think of other exotic instruments.
Bassoon,
piano.
Oh yeah,
flute,
bassoon,
cello, violin.
Yeah, like right across the
viola.
board, different kinds of instruments, and I've been learning a lot about Canadian works and about solo works in particular.
Let's listen now to Grace Period by Vancouver composer Jeffery Ryan, performed by Liam Hockley, clarinet, as part of the Unaccompanied online concert series from Canadian Music Centre, BC.